Welcome back to another video, everyone. Today I'm going to be ranking every state in the US. I think we'll go in order, so starting off with Texas. Now, I don't know too much about this state, so D tier. Texas. So I have heard that this is one of the colder states in America, and for that reason I will be putting it in S tier. Next up we have Texas. I've actually heard that this is one of the hotter states in the US. Because of that, I'll be putting it in probably E tier. I don't really know too much about Texas, so I'll be putting that in probably E tier. Texas. This is going to be going in probably F tier. Texas. Now, I don't know too much about this, but it's not a very creative state. I mean, look at the shape of it. It's just a straight up rectangle. If we look at like this one down here, Texas, it's a very similar shape, but if you take a look down to the right side here, it's not just a straight up rectangle. Oh, we've got Texas as well, actually. For that reason, I am going to have to put this in E tier, but I do like the name of it. I will rank Texas. And you know what? I'm going to be putting this one in S tier. They might be wondering, well, hang on a sec, it's got the same map design. Why are you putting it in S tier? Well, the thing is, you hear about all these states all the time in different TV shows, online, stuff like that, but not Texas. You never hear about this state. In fact, I didn't even know it existed until a few years ago. What does that say? Texas. I'm going to be putting this in A tier. I don't really know too much about Texas, so I'll be putting that in D tier. Texas. Now this one is an iconic state. I'll be putting that in A tier. I know it is quite hot over there, but without Texas, we wouldn't have all the Texas man stories. Texas is a GTA online server. Texas, pretty decent, so I'll be putting that in B tier. Texas. Now that is a pretty iconic state. I will be putting that in A tier. What does that say? Texas. Not the biggest fan of the name of Texas, to be quite honest with you, so I will be putting that in E tier. Texas. I am going to have to put this in C tier. Texas. You know, I've not heard too much about this one, but I do like the name of it, so I will be putting that in B tier. Texas. So where should we put Texas? D tier. Texas. I'm not the biggest fan of the name because we already have a state called Texas, so like, what's the point of naming another one Texas? Could you not think of something different? For that reason, it will be going below Texas. Texas. So I do like the name of this one. It reminds me of Texas fried chicken, so I will be putting that in A tier. Texas. I do like this state, to be quite honest with you. I'm not really sure why, but I will be putting Texas in C tier. Texas. It has a relatively boring name compared to the rest, so I will be putting that in D tier. Texas. I do like the states that end in Texas because it reminds me of like some sort of kingdom. So for that reason, I will be putting in A tier. What the bloody hell does that say? Texas. For the name alone and just being so long and hard to pronounce, I will be putting that in C tier. Texas. We'll be going in the tier above Texas, just because it's a lot easier to pronounce. Texas. Now, this is the one that I actually visited last year, so for that reason, it will be going in S tier. Texas. This one's just D tier, to be honest. Not much to talk about. Texas is going to get a low tier because, well, it's called Texas. It sounds like miserable. Actually, I think it's pronounced Texas, but still, it still sounds like Texas. So, bad vibes coming from this one, you know. Texas. You don't hear too much about this state, but it reminds me of French. Texas, and I'm not the biggest fan of his music, so I'll be putting that in E tier. F tier, actually. Texas. This one, I don't know, E tier. The bloody hell does that say? Texas. Isn't this where Area 51 is? Because of that and all the alien sightings and UFO crashes and everything that happened in the state, I will be putting it in S tier. Next, we have Texas. Texas will be going in... Well, it reminds me of the UK, that name, so I will be putting that in E tier. Texas. I've heard this is a really cool state, actually. Texas. So I don't think this state actually got its name from Texas, but because it's called Texas, it does sound like it is taking its name from the original. Yeah, it just kind of reminds me of like New Super Mario Bros, you know, so I will be putting that in D tier. Texas. You know, you hear a lot of cool stuff about Texas, but from people that actually live there, you hear the complete opposite, so I will be putting that in B tier. Texas. This sounds like a pretty good state. Like, I've heard a few things about it, so I will be putting that in S tier. Texas. Where did we put Texas? We haven't ranked that yet, actually, so I'll be putting that in D tier. And then I'll be putting Texas in the one below it. Texas. This one just sounds cool. You know what I mean? It sounds like Hawaii. So for that reason, I'll be putting it in S tier. Texas. Not the biggest fan of this one's name, to be honest, so I'll be putting that in C tier. Texas reminds me of the word Oreo. And I do like Oreos, but not too often because they just give me an upset stomach. So I will be putting this in probably D tier. Texas. This just has an iconic name, you know, and for that reason, I'll be putting it in A tier. Texas. The fuck? That's a state? I didn't know this was an entire state. I know it was a place, but I didn't think it like had its own dedicated state. So for that reason, I'll be putting it in F tier. Texas. This will just go up with S tier. Texas. Just confusing to spell, to be quite honest with you. C tier. Texas. It's a very iconic US state. I've seen a lot of early 2000s, mid 2000s documentaries that are set here though, so for that reason it will be going in A tier. Texas. Pretty cool. B tier. What does that say? Venom? Texas, E tier, for sounding like Venom. Texas is probably going to be going in E tier. Texas. This one's pretty decent. It'll be going in B tier. Texas thinks it's slick, trying to get a different placement on the list. And then lastly, we have Texas. If you flip this state around, it looks like an animal. You know, like you got the 2 legs and you can briefly make out the shape of a dog or something. For that reason, it will be going in B tier. Well, there you have it. That is my ranking of all of Texas. You know, I will bump Texas up 1 just because it is very iconic. Let's put it here actually. That being said, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you all in my next video.